I'm bringing you more than 10 of the best sell high players in Dynasty football, but with a twist. The twist being, these are your submissions. That's right. Over in our Discord channel, I asked you guys to tell me who you think is the best sell high in all of Dynasty football. And you guys hit me with a lot of replies. I'm excited to dive through them. Keep in mind, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you if I agree or disagree with the player being a sell high. So the first submission that you guys had is from Moritz. And Moritz says, all right, my take is to sell DK Metcalf high. We'll talk about this. Y'all know I've been on this train for a couple years. I still think his value is too high from what you are getting here. An almost 27-year-old wide receiver 2 at best from Keep Trade Cut, you could conceivably get Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, or even a pick in the range of an Adunze. I'd rather have any of those guys. I personally traded Metcalf in a bigger package last month that landed me Lamar and JT in a Superflex league. And you can see the trade that he made in his own league, getting Lamar Jackson, Jonathan Taylor, sending away Jordan Love, DK Metcalf, Joe Mixon, and a third in a Superflex league. I'm taking the Lamar and JT side of that deal every single time. And it's not because I don't love Jordan Love, because y'all know I do. But we have been on the sell high DK Metcalf train for quite some time. You know, the last 2 years, we have been telling you to sell DK Metcalf. He is not worth what the production is compared to his value in the Dynasty community. You know, last year, we were looking at underdog rankings. He was wide receiver 15. Right around Keep Trade Cut as well, he was wide receiver 15. And we just couldn't understand it because he hadn't returned that value since the year 2020. From 2021 onwards, these are his points per game finishes. Wide receiver 20 on a per game basis. Wide receiver 24 on a per game basis. And last year, the wide receiver 22 on a per game basis. And be honest, if you owned DK Metcalf last year, you know how frustrating that was. There was a couple games where he went crazy, but it was a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of really poor performances, especially now that he's sharing a wide receiver room with some very talented guys in JSN, Tyler Lockett. So look, I have been pro selling DK Metcalf for a while, but as you can see in my rankings, I have him ranked higher than the Flock Fantasy community and then Keep Trade Cut, which is at wide receiver 25. I don't have him drastically higher. I have him at wide receiver 24, which is right around where I had him last year. So the idea that he's a sell high, I'm not 100% sure that I can get on board with the notion that you can sell him high, but certainly it depends on what league you're in, right? I mean, if I'm looking at my rankings over on the Flock Fantasy website, or why don't we look at the community rankings rather and see around what names DK Metcalf is, around George Pickens, around Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jaden Reed. You know, so some of these names I'm absolutely willing to pivot to. If you can pivot to a Tank Dell, if you can pivot to a Zay Flowers, a Rashee Rice, who I'm higher on, a DJ Moore, a T Higgins, I'm 100% in that camp and down to do that. I just don't think most people are going to be willing to make that pivot. But let's have a look at some real trades that have happened across sleeper databases. Okay, so this is the trade finder over on the Flock Fantasy website. Anyone with a membership can use this. Use a promo code LAND if you want to support us and get a membership. But essentially what we are able to do is we're able to look across every single sleeper league, and we're able to look at a database of real trades that have happened across leagues. So every league, every trade that you're going to see today, these are real trades that have happened in real leagues, and you can look at the exact format. So for example, 1 quarterback, 10 team start 8. Someone was able to send Metcalf, D-Hop in a late second for Kyron Williams. In a start 8, those elite running backs worth way more. I'll take Kyron Williams there. So in that sense, I would 100% agree. In another 1 quarterback start 8, someone was able to send DK Metcalf and Devonta Smith for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hey, I am totally on board in a start 8. I am looking at the superstar players. I'm not looking for depth and, a bunch of wide receiver 2s and, fringe guys. Another 1 quarterback where someone gets a Kyron Williams. Another super flex where someone gets Kyron Williams. Look, I will 100% endorse. If you can go get Kyron Williams for DK Metcalf, I'm doing that. I'm doing that in a heartbeat. But look, it all depends on the value. Here someone got DK Metcalf. They sent George Pickens in a third. That seems like relatively even to me. Here someone got DK Metcalf and they sent Rachaad White in a 12-team Superflex start 10. Give me the DK Metcalf side of that deal. So look, I would have to say in general, I don't believe DK Metcalf is a sell high because I think we've all already adjusted. If this was this time last year, I would be all on board. But like he said, if you can pivot to the Tank Dells, the Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Nico Collinses of the world, I would do that and I wouldn't think twice. All right, the second sell high that you guys have suggested, and this one is from C-Rab. He says, Stroud's value is out of control in my opinion. So we're saying sell CJ Stroud here. Okay. He says he's great to have, but I'd gladly pivot down to acquire some draft capital on top. So I guess we have to determine what that pivot down is. I have CJ Stroud as my quarterback 3 in Superflex and one quarterback. Now he's the quarterback 3 across pretty much every platform at this time. But if we look at CJ Stroud's rookie season, in CJ's rookie season, he averaged 18.7 points per game and was a quarterback 7 on a per game basis. He threw 23 touchdowns and he threw for over 4,100 yards while completing 64% of his passes. So right now he is a quarterback 3 on a per game basis, the quarterback 7 last year for fantasy purposes. We are believing based off this historic rookie season that he's going to take a step next year. As Tank Dell gets healthy, as Nico Collins continues to develop his chemistry, as Dalton Schultz is now there, that we are believing that another year in the NFL, CJ Stroud's going to take another step. However, I'm kind of on board with this. Again, not the sense that I don't want CJ Stroud. Okay, don't hear what I'm not saying. I obviously want CJ Stroud, but I'm also completely on board the idea of pivoting off a CJ Stroud and getting draft capital in return. Why don't I look at my rankings? For example, Lamar Jackson, my quarterback 4, Justin Herbert, my quarterback 5, Burrow, my quarterback 6, Hurts, my quarterback 7. Those guys are all in the same tier. Don't freak out if you have someone lower. I would even go down to Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray. All of my top 12 quarterbacks, I would be willing to pivot off of Stroud and get future draft capital. If you're telling me I'd get a Jordan Love and a future first, I'm totally open to doing that. If you're telling me I can get Anthony Richardson in a future first, if I can get Kyler Murray in a future first, absolutely, I'm 100% on board with doing that. Remember, Justin Herbert had an incredible rookie season as well. If you would have pivoted off of him for some really good names and future draft capital, that probably would have benefited you at this moment. We all know Justin Herbert's a good quarterback. We all believe in Justin Herbert, but it's all about getting the most value on your team. So overall, in a vacuum, I'm kind of on board with that idea of pivoting off of CJ Stroud. But honestly, when I look at the real trades that have happened or across different leagues, it doesn't look like many people are getting maximum value. I mean, the one trade I can really point to is this person who sent CJ Stroud. They got Bijan Robinson and Drake May in a start 11. So essentially, Drake May is a top 5 pick in Superflex leagues. So let's say he got the 103 and Bijan Robinson for CJ Stroud. I understand not everybody would be willing to do that deal. I would personally be willing to do that deal to get one of those elite top tier running backs in fantasy. Another person got CJ Stroud. They sent away Lamar Jackson in a third. See, if you're doing this type of deal, that's not enough for me. A third round pick does not move the needle enough. I need Lamar Jackson and a second at minimum to make a move like that where I'm pivoting off of him. Trying to look more at Superflex leagues here. See, someone got Kyler Murray in a second in a 1 quarterback format, start 9. I think I'm open to that idea. Again, just looking through these deals, some of these deals you could say CJ Stroud's a buy low, honestly. If someone got CJ Stroud for CeeDee Lamb in a Superflex start 10 league, give me CJ Stroud every day of the week. Someone pivoted off of CJ Stroud to Jalen Hurts, give me CJ Stroud long term. Here we see someone getting Justin Herbert and a second for CJ Stroud. I'm on board with that. I like that idea. So again, it all comes down to what you can pivot to, but I'm totally open to that idea. All right, the next player we are talking about, this is from Chef Cookie. Chef Cookie says, Gabe Davis, get what you can. Just sold him for Zach Moss and feel absolutely great about it. Gabe Davis is an interesting name. I mean, in my rankings, he's wide receiver 53. On Keep Trade Cut, he's wide receiver 57. I think most people use Keep Trade Cut at this point. So again, I can't really say, with 100% confidence that Gabe Davis is a sell high because he isn't really viewed with much respect in the community already. Now, if we look at what Gabe Davis has done up until this point in his career, he has 3 out of his 4 years where he has averaged under 10 PPR points per game. Only the year 2022 has he averaged over 10 points per game. Wide receiver 36 on a per game basis is his career high. And last year, he was the wide receiver 50. Now, this has never been a volume guy. He's never had over 100 targets. 92 is his career high. 48 receptions is his career high, and 836 receiving yards, again, his career high. He has been thriving off of touchdowns and kind of being the decoy, if you will, in a very good offense with Josh Allen. So now we're going to a team in Jacksonville that lost Calvin Ridley, but that we anticipate is going to add a name in the NFL draft. So look, I'm totally on board to sell a guy like Gabe Davis, but again, I just don't feel like this is a name that people are really looking to add to their rosters. I just can't think of anyone who's like excited about adding the name Gabe Davis. I mean, here are some of the trades that we've seen. Gabe Davis, someone sent away for Mac Jones in a 1 quarterback format. We see here in a super flex league, someone sent Bijan and Gabe Davis for Joe Burrow. Yeah, in that sense, if Gabe Davis was a throw-in piece to get a super flex, superstar in Joe Burrow, then we'll go ahead and take the quarterback in a super flex format. You can see here someone in a super flex format sent Gabe Davis in a second to get a first round pick. Again, if there's a way you can make him the throw-in piece, I'm totally about that. I can't call him a true sell high, but if there is any deal out there in Dynasty that you're trying to get done and someone wants you to add Gabe Davis to get the deal over the line, 100%, I will add Gabe Davis to get any deal done. Ideally, you can sell him for a second. I just don't think most people would do that. But you can see another deal here. Super flex league. Someone was able to get Deontay Johnson. They sent away Gabe Davis and Desmond Ridder. That trade happened today. Now, I don't think that's realistic in every league, but again, 100% use Gabe Davis as that piece that you can pivot off of to get a deal done. All right, the next sell high is from Spinola, and he says DeAndre Swift. He wants to sell high on DeAndre Swift. He's never been a good goal line back or a pass blocker. That is true. We got to be honest. DeAndre Swift has never been known for goal line efficiency or good in pass protection. I'm not going to say he's poor at it, but he's never been known for that. The Bears won't use him after this year, and he will mostly be used as a pass catcher and occasionally explosive runs. Not a good sign. 2 years in a row, the team that used him let him go would sell for an early second. Okay, I don't know that I wholeheartedly agree with the notion that the Bears won't use him after this year. Outside of just like a pass catcher, but I do get it. I get where you're coming from here 100%. Let's look at what DeAndre Swift has done in his career in fantasy football. Obviously, we know he went in the second round out of Georgia. He is now 25 years old, and he joins the Chicago Bears on a 3-year contract. So if we look at his career as a rookie, we had very high expectations. He was an RB15 on a per game basis, and then the RB8 his sophomore season in the NFL, averaging over 16 points per game. But we might have reached the ceiling for a guy like DeAndre Swift. Last year, being the RB1 for the Philadelphia Eagles, he averaged 12.5 points per game. He was very up, he was very down, but not someone that you could trust week in, week out. He's someone you could put in your lineup and you could expect, anywhere from 8 to 12 points, but this is not someone every week that you're expecting to win your matchup. Anytime you go from running behind Philadelphia's offensive line to really any other offensive line in the NFL, you do expect to take a little bit of a hit in your efficiency. And it was at least a little bit concerning to me that he only averaged 4.6 yards per carry behind that heavy Eagles offensive line. I expected him to average a little bit more. But look, here's the deal. At the end of the day, if you're going to sell high on DeAndre Swift, the question becomes, well, what would you prefer in return? So if we look at my rankings, there's a couple names that I would like to pivot to. If I can pivot to a Derrick Henry, I'm doing that. If I can pivot to a Derrick Henry, get a second, and send you Swift in a third, 100% I'm getting that deal done. If I can pivot off of DeAndre Swift to a David Montgomery, I would rather have David Montgomery based off what I've seen so far. Same with Isaiah Pacheco. Those are the kind of names that I would be looking to pivot off of DeAndre Swift. We also heard this person talk about trading DeAndre Swift for an early second, right? That's the kind of deal that you're wanting to get done. I wholeheartedly agree. If you're able to get anywhere from the 201 to the 204, somewhere in that range for DeAndre Swift, I'm all aboard. I'm totally willing to do that myself. But let's have a look. Here are some real trades that have happened in Sleeper so far. So in this format, Superflex League, start 10, someone was able to get Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift, a second round pick, and they sent away a first. Unfortunately, we don't know where that first is, but all day, I would take Swift if that's like a late first, right? Another deal here where someone was able to get Zay Flowers, and all it took was DeAndre Swift in a second. Absolutely. I love that idea of going to the first round wide receiver entering his second season. You can see here, someone was able to grab Travis Etienne. Y'all know we have been big on Travis Etienne and buying him despite everyone telling you to sell him this entire offseason. So they sent away DeAndre Swift, a third and a second, got Travis Etienne and a third round pick. That's the kind of deal that I would love to do. Again, if I can pivot up into the Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Saquon, Etienne range, I'm 100% wanting to do that. If I can pivot down to a Derrick Henry, let's look at what the community currently ranks DeAndre Swift down. If I can tier down and go to a Joe Mixon plus draft capital, David Montgomery plus draft capital, Javonte Williams plus draft capital, all these deals I'm absolutely willing to pursue myself. So in a sense, I'm on board. I have him ranked as my RB 18. The community has a much higher RB 15. So that's not really where I would personally view him. All right. The next trade high is from AE2K9. He says Nick Chubb. He is at the running back age cliff where you sell him anyways, but also coming off a serious leg injury on top of it as well. Also, Ford made such an impact while he was gone, it's hard to see him going away. He still holds big name value, which also makes him easier to flip. A trade that is possible is Jaylen Warren and a pick, or Mixon being the lead back in Houston. You know, look, I just don't personally believe it. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. I just don't personally believe that Nick Chubb holds a lot of value in the community. I mean, right now on Keep Trade Cut, he's the RB 33. So I can send like a late second round pick to get some Nick Chubb. I think I'm interested in getting a Nick Chubb at that price. So I can't say I wholeheartedly believe that he's a sell high. I might actually be looking to buy him on the low for early third round picks for the 209 to the 212, somewhere in that range in Superflex leagues. Because I understand that, you know, he had this serious knee injury, but it wasn't late in the season. And I feel like if the Browns were going to have cut him, they would have already cut him and allowed him to look at other options in free agency at this point. And they as well probably would have addressed the running back position a little bit more than just Jerome Ford in their backfield. But we look at the history of Nick Chubb. Since 2019, he has been the RB 10 on a per game basis or better. RB 10 on a per game basis or better. Obviously, his career high was 2022, where he was the RB 6, averaging almost 17 points per game. We didn't get to see much Nick Chubb last year. Only played 2 games, and one of those games he got injured in. But for me, personally, I just believe that if they were going to let him go, they would have already done so. And for his price to be RB 33, I more view him as a buy than a sell, just because I think the general consensus amongst Dynasty community is that there's not much belief in a guy like Nick Chubb. But if I'm gonna get even one more year of a top 24 performance or 2 more years of a top 24 performance, I think I'd personally be willing to send a late second, an early third to go out and get some Nick Chubb. And I think in a lot of leagues, he will go for third round picks. I wholeheartedly believe that. All right, the next sell high is from Trevor. Trevor says, this isn't really a sell high, but more of a get out while you can player. But it's JSN. Oh, you're breaking my heart, man. But I get it. I do. I honestly, before I even read this, I understand. He says, if you look at every other first round wide receiver since 2020, there haven't been any to average less than 9.5 points per game that have been able to turn their careers around. With Lockett re-signing, I don't really see the target upside for JSN to even be a wide receiver 2 next year, and his value will continue to fall if he doesn't start to produce. I sold him for the 109 recently in a half PPR league with the intent to re-roll on another wide receiver with similar draft capital. I can't figure out how to send a picture here, but Essentially, he's telling us he sent away Jackson Smith and Jigba for the 109. Okay, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Let's get all on the same page. I mean, you might disagree. Super talented wide receiver. Extremely talented player. If you were to swap JSN and Puka Nacua last year, I'm wholeheartedly convinced that JSN would have been able to put up similar numbers in that offense, okay? Maybe not the same, who knows? But what I'm trying to convey to you guys is that context matters, the team that you're on matters, and your opportunities, clearly, we know those matter. So in his first season, he was only able to have 93 targets. He caught 63 of those and had 628 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, averaged 8.8 points per game. The wide receiver, 56. And the whole reason we were excited about JSN is because it looked like there was a scenario in which the Seahawks could get out of that Tyler Lockett contract or send him away or cut him, whole new regime and everything, right? Unfortunately, Tyler Lockett restructures his contract and he's going to stay in town for the next 2 years. That's tough. 2 more years with Tyler Lockett, 3 guys you got to share the ball with over in Seattle. That is just really, really difficult to picture and to kind of come to terms with. So I'm definitely not against the idea, but why don't we see some real trades that have happened for Jackson Smith and Jigba in the Dynasty community recently? Now, you mentioned the 109. I'd like to get into the 107 range. I think ideally in a super flex league, if you can get the 107 for a JSN, you pull the trigger, you're getting probably a, think about the names that would be there. You're getting a Roma Dunze potentially, a Brock Bowers. What if JJ McCarthy goes in the first round? So I would wholeheartedly agree that if you can get in that 107, 108 range, I think it's probably wise to pull the trigger and get the draft pick instead. But here in a 1 quarterback format, this was today, someone got JSN and Gus Edwards. They sent away Drake London in a third. Give me Drake London in a third. It's not even close. I'm honestly not even considering it. How about another trade where someone got Jackson Smith and Jigba, but they sent away Quentin Johnston, Keaton Mitchell, and a first-round pick in 2025. 2025, you're kind of re-rolling in that class. I'm not a huge fan of that class. Give me Jackson Smith and Jigba there. We've got another deal where someone gets JSN in a second. They send away a 2026 first-round pick. That's just way too far into the future to know who actually wins that deal. But in a 1 quarterback format, someone gets a first and second round pick in a start 9-10 team league. So that's guaranteed to be top 10. I like that deal, getting a first and a second round pick. In a super flex league, someone was able to get T. Higgins for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Totally, I'm on board. I like the idea. Maybe T. Higgins gets traded. At worst, he's the important piece with Joe Burrow. In a super flex league, start 9, someone got Devon Achane. I love JSN, but give me Devon Achane. And you guys know how much I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm just trying to be realistic here, right? So when I think about names I'd like to pivot off to, when it comes to Jackson Smith and Jigba, if I can pivot off to names like Jordan Addison, at this point, I think I'm willing to explore that. Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Michael Pittman, Waddle, Ayuk, Rashee Rice, clearly Drake London I would agree with, and DJ Moore. Those are all the names that I would be willing to kind of pivot off and, see if someone is interested. And it's not because Jackson Smith and Jigba isn't super talented. Guys, I do think he's going to take the next step this year. Just we have to define what that next step is, because that next step might not be what we're all hoping and praying and believing for. All right, David Blythe is the next one. He says, this one might be weird, but Dak Prescott is what he's saying. The Cowboys have shown they aren't certain with the direction they are headed with how they handled free agency. I think they are planning to build around Micah and Lamb. A coaching staff could change, which they could rebuild. That could make Dak's future 50-50 with Dallas. I'll be honest, guys. It's just my personal opinion. I would view Dak Prescott at this point as a buy low. I would view Dak as a buy low. Whenever people in the Dynasty community see that number 30 for quarterbacks, something happens. Something switches in their brain. They're saying, oh, he's over 30 years old. I no longer want him on my Dynasty team, which in my opinion is a little bit silly. We're talking about a Dak Prescott who is coming off a career year for fantasy. The quarterback 4 on a per game basis, over 20 points per game. And he's done it before. This isn't a fluke, right? We can go all the way back to 2021, where he was a quarterback 9, averaging 20.7 points per game. We can go even further back to 2019, where he was a quarterback 3 on a per game basis. He has been a very good fantasy quarterback for the last 4-5 years, and there's no reason to believe that that is going to stop anytime soon. I totally get the notion that he's like a uncertain player in the eyes of this staff, but you have to ask yourself, if they do replace Mike McCarthy, then if they're going to replace Dak Prescott, who is the better option out there? Are the Cowboys going to be in a position to draft a good quarterback? Very unlikely. They're never in the top 10 of the NFL draft. Is there going to be a free agent that's more valuable or more valuable to them than Dak Prescott? Unlikely. Quarterbacks are very rarely available in free agency. That's why you saw Kirk Cousins get the crazy deal that he got. So I don't know. I have to disagree. Dak Prescott is my quarterback 13. I personally would be looking to buy him rather than sell him. Just my opinion. Just one man's opinion. You don't have to take it, but you can at least ponder over the opinion maybe. All right, the next sell high is from Cody Poop. Great name. He says, as a Colts fan, this hurts me, but Michael Pittman. I don't get the wide receiver 15 price tag. He's a very good player, but he's really not guaranteed high-end wide receiver 2 targets in this offense. I would sell for Nico or Rice, who are slightly below him at wide receiver 18 and 20. You know, Michael Pittman just feels super, super safe. 26 years old, just got the contract extension with the Indianapolis Colts, and is coming off a career high season in 2023. 156 targets, career high. 109 receptions, career high. 1,100 receiving yards, career high. And he only had 4 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver 14 on a per game basis, averaging 15.5 points per game in PPR. So I get the idea that you might want to pivot off of him, but in my opinion, when you pay him this kind of money, he is your unquestioned clear wide receiver 1. And I get that Anthony Richardson is coming back. Excuse me. I have my own concerns around Anthony Richardson's ability to produce fantasy relevant wide receivers. There were 2 games last year where Anthony Richardson was healthy the entire game. And in one of those games, Michael Pittman went crazy. In the other game, he had 4 targets. So there's really not a large enough sample size at this point to make a strong verdict either way what Michael Pittman will look like with Anthony Richardson. But what I can tell you is it's Shane Steichen, the same head coach, and that under that head coach, he had a career high in targets, a career high in receptions, a career high in receiving yards, all while being in a subpar offense where he only saw 4 receiving touchdowns. What happens if those touchdowns double? I mean, we could be looking at the baseline of what Michael Pittman will give you for a couple years to come. Josh Downs doesn't scare me. Maybe they add another wide receiver in the draft. We could have a different conversation. But at this point, after getting that kind of money and staying with the same coaching staff, I actually think he's just a hold rather than a buy or sell. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, we have a couple more. We're going to fly through these last ones. Mighty Booch here says, Justin Herbert is a sell high. Oh, you're hurting my heart here. I see the opposite. But let's hear your reason. Mighty Booch says he's lost his weapons, including Eckler. We'll have Quentin Johnston, Palmer, and possibly a rookie on the field. Harbaugh runs a conservative offense, Herbert ranked 18th in passing attempts last year. Volume isn't likely to get better. Would be happy to tear down and gain picks, especially if your team could head into a rebuild. Herbert for Love in a late first or early second. Send him and an aging asset of yours, Herbert and Keenan Allen for Love and Nico. Dak and Garrett Wilson. Okay, so I totally get the notion from a lot of people that we should be concerned because there's no longer Keenan Allen. Mike Williams was gone, and now he's lost Austin Eckler, and there's a new coaching staff in town, Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh. But I just personally believe there's a couple things at play here. Number one, every year we overanalyze our ability to predict what an offense will look like. Happens every single year. Always. We always overanalyze that. Number two, let's actually think about his weapons that he had last year. How many games was Josh Palmer his wide receiver 1? Let's be honest. How many games was Austin Eckler not dealing with an injury? How about Keenan Allen dealing with an injury? How about Mike Williams who tore his ACL? So I totally understand where people are coming from. Clearly, you're going to be a little bit worse without Keenan Allen. However, we all know there are some very good receivers in this class. At pick number 5, they could add a Malik Neighbors, a Rome Odunze. Maybe they go Joe Alt if they want to establish the run. But still, in rounds 2, 3, and 4, there are great wide receiver options. Your Ladd McConkey's, your Xavier Worthy's if he falls. There are very good names. This is the deepest wide receiver class. Ricky Pearsall in the 2nd round, maybe even in the 3rd round. You can look at a Javon Baker, Malik Washington. The point is, there are very good players all stacked throughout this class. So I didn't mind the Chargers moving on from a player who's about to be 32 years old in Keenan Allen, right? That's just my personal opinion. I also love the idea of betting on players who have proven to me that they can produce fantasy points. Justin Herbert has proven that to me. He's 26 years old. He's very young. He's got a long-term contract. He is a franchise face of this team. And if we look at what he's done in fantasy, as a rookie, he scored 29 points per game, or 22.9 points per game. Quarterback 7 on a per game basis. Same with CJ Stroud in his rookie season. Then in his 2nd year, he was a quarterback 2, averaging over 23 points per game. Then last year, we talk about, obviously, rough year in 2022. But then last year, 18.6 points per game. The quarterback 8 on a per game basis. Like we already talked about, without Keenan Allen for a lot of it, without Mike Williams for most of it, with an unhealthy Austin Eckler who already was past his peak. I think we can all agree. So in my opinion, I would say that quarterback 8 is kind of around your baseline. That is the floor for a guy like Justin Herbert. If you're selling low on Justin Herbert right now, how would you feel if they went out and drafted a Rome Odunze? How would you feel if they went out and drafted a Malik Neighbors, right? If somehow they got Marvin Harrison Jr. in a trade up. What if they went out and got Ladd McConkey in round 2 and Malachi Corley in round 3? You hear where I'm coming from? Like, there is a scenario here. There are still resources for the Chargers to improve their receiving options. What happens if they go out and get Brock Bowers at pick 5? We know Greg Roman has an infatuation with the tight end position. What if he gets one of the best tight end prospects we've ever seen? Right? So I totally hear where everyone's coming from. But in my personal opinion, I would view Justin Herbert as a buy low. All these names right now, people typically have ahead of Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson. A lot of people have those names ahead of Justin Herbert. So for me, he's already proven it multiple years. He's still young, and he didn't have a healthy team last year, and he still put up good points. I think I'm team buy Justin Herbert rather than sell Justin Herbert. All right, and we got one submission from Twitter. This is the 10th player that we're going to talk about today. And the reason I included this player is because this is what Badaki and I have been preaching all offseason on our live streams. CW46 says Olave is a sell high. Get a better win now wide receiver and a future first seems like a steal to me. So in this deal, you can see this gentleman gets DJ Moore and a 26 first round pick. He sends away Chris Olave. I love Chris Olave. You love Chris Olave. Everyone loves Chris Olave. There is no reason for this to be like an anti-Chris Olave take. We all love Chris Olave. He's a very good player, ridiculous route runner, and an efficient player. However, we have to recognize that he is limited by his surroundings. As a rookie, he was a wide receiver 25 on a per game basis. In his 2nd year, he was a wide receiver 19 on a per game basis, seeing 138 targets, over 1,100 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. Wide receiver 19, somewhere in that range, wide receiver 15 to 20 to 22, that's the kind of range you might be limited with Chris Olave while he is dealing with Derek Carr. And there is no indication from the Saints that they're going to be moving on from Derek Carr. I mean, what happens if this team does add a Brian Thomas Jr. in the draft? What if they add a Malik Neighbors? Not to say that Malik Neighbors is projected to fall. What if they add a weapon that we really like? And now all of a sudden, Olave, who's a very good player, we're typically relying on targets with him, but now you have more players in there to compete with targets. So in my personal opinion, I have been suggesting to people to pivot off of Olave for a long, long time. Can you get Tyreek Hill and future draft capital? Can you get DJ Moore and a future first round pick? That is the number one trade we have been preaching on this channel for multiple months. And guess what? That's exactly what this gentleman just did. Got a 2026 first round pick and DJ Moore. So don't tell me it's impossible to do, because we're seeing real trades right here, right now. Can you get Rashee Rice in a first? Drake London, can you just pivot directly to Drake London and get a second, swap a third? Can you get Jalen Waddle in a first? Can you get Tank Dell in a first? Can you get T. Higgins in a first? All these names are names that I would be willing to pivot off of Chris Olave to get future draft capital and a player that is capable of giving me wide receiver 2 production. This is not an anti-Chris Olave take. This is an anti-Derek Carr, anti-New Orleans Saints, anti-that headache take, okay? So hopefully you hear what I'm saying with that take. But guys, that is it for today. I am very curious to see what you think of this video. They're not my takes, they're your takes, and I'm judging them as I go. But hopefully you guys enjoy the video. And hopefully you agree with some of these takes, you disagree with some of them, and we have some good conversations in the chat. Do me a favor, smash that like button. It's a little bit of a creative way to present takes, but they're all from you. But by the way, if you want to support the show, become a Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND. And if you do, you'll get everything on your screen. A Dynasty team review, our 2024 rookie report, the fantasy hotline, a direct DM to us for advice, all articles, all databases on the website. So go ahead and check it out. Use the promo code LAND. We'll see you soon. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.